I don't know about you, Dave, but when I first got into Lord of the Rings and I first saw the movies, I didn't think of Frodo Baggins as much of a hero. I mean, we had these colossal battle sequences with these kings of men. We had wizards facing off against ancient demons. We had horse lords massacring parties of Uruk-hai in the night, and we had this I don't know, an unending list of heroic characters of all sorts of races. With men, elves, dwarves, trees. Uh, and in the middle of all that, we had this character who's supposed to be this kind of unassuming hero, but he's almost so unassuming that he completely fades into the background of what is supposed to be his own story. And look, I'm going to put it out there. I would even go as far as to say that in the movies, Frodo is my least favorite member of the Fellowship. So why is that?
Currently, like even now.
No, I repeated in the movies.
Yes, but even now, when you watch the movies, I will
um,
repeat, even now.
okay. Probably not. No, probably not now. But definitely initially, because I thought, out of the four hobbits, Sam was, clearly the bravest, and just he was the real unsung hero of the movies. The other two hobbits were just there for comic relief, and they were also really cool, and they also had their moments of bravery. And I mean, Pippin, who would be considered the worst hobbit, he started the whole light in the beacon sequence. So I mean, you can't hate him.
The Bequins.
The beacons, yeah.
I mean, the your everyone's perception of Lord of the Rings. Well, if you grew up with it like we did, it would have changed drastically from when I was a kid, and all you want is the swinging sword of Aragorn, and then when the games came out, then you also really love playing with Legolas and Gimli.
Yeah, who was
But
playing with Frodo in like
in the Return of the King
the
game.
Return of the King, where you could get like Aragorn up to like level 85 and Gandalf was up on 90, and then Frodo was down at level 0.
Yeah, no, like it was only. I think most people's appreciation for Frodo would be if you read the books first, or like for us when we read the books after the movies. Then we got to see the true
Yeah, now
heroism
don't
of
get me
Frodo
wrong.
and the others.
Don't get me wrong. There are things in the movie that he does that are heroic, and there are things that
Yeah,
the Peter Jackson and co gave him to do that maybe actually he didn't have to do in the books, which were other things that they added in to kind of give him little heroic moments, which we will touch on. But I think basically the reason that we kind of feel this way about Frodo, it all sort of comes down to some important decisions that were made when attempting to adapt these books into the movie. And maybe one of the reasons could be trying to target a specific audience. Who knows? But today we're going to get into all that, and we're going to have a look at how Frodo is so much different in the books to his movie portrayal, and also why book Frodo is the hero we can all look up to and fall in love with.
nah.
Right, Dave. So we're going to get into it now. So the first thing I want to discuss, and the first kind of big major difference and major change, is probably the most obvious one about Frodo. What do you think I'm going to talk about first? About the biggest difference between Frodo in the books and the films?
The fact that he's not a bitch in the book.
How did you know?
Well, I mean, some of the scenes that whenever you have a casual movie fan that's only seen Lord of the Rings once or twice, they're always like, "Oh, Frodo! Like, why is it when, especially the ring wraith scene, he drops his sword and like he's always like falling over, or he's always like screaming Gandalf, or Aragorn, or he always needs help and assistance." So it's just his, for lack of better expression, his bitchiness.
Right, we shall discuss his bitchiness at a later point in this episode, but I was actually referring to a different point. So the first thing,
Okay, I know it. I know it.
yeah.
Is it is it his age?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, right.
Probably the
All
biggest
right.
difference, and this is maybe like the first domino of a long line of dominoes that kind of caused the change in his
Very true.
character. I would say maybe. So for those who don't know, Elijah Wood was 18 years old during most of the filming of The Lord of the Rings, and his fellow Hobbit cast members were all older than him. Dominic Monaghan, who was Merry, was 22 years old, and both Sean Astin and Billy Boyd, that's Sam and Pippin, they were a decade or more older than him at 28 and 31. Now, in the books, we meet Frodo on his 33rd birthday, which is his coming of age, and he's coming into his inheritance. And then 17 years pass, and we pick up again with him in chapter 2 as a 50-year-old man, having been the owner of the ring this whole time and living a normal life in the Shire. And he was the oldest of the hobbits in the Fellowship. Sam was 39, Merry was 37, and Pippin was 29. So for our mathematicians out there, that's 21 years younger than Frodo. So that's a huge age gap between. So this is a very, very important detail because they're going to be looking up to this older, wiser, just scholar as well. He's not just their buddy, I suppose. So not only is Elijah Wood the youngest looking character in their group by a long shot, he was specifically significantly younger looking than Sam, who he would spend most of the movie with. And this change has a notable effect on the character's dynamics. So, as we said, in the books, Frodo is 12 years older than Sam, and he's of a well-respected line of hobbits. He's almost like a nobleman compared to just the kind of your common man or your gardener that is Sam. And Frodo is learned and wise, whereas Sam is uneducated. And their relationship is supposed to be that of a knight and a page. Or I was just watching Shogun recently, so the lord and vassal is another common relationship there. But actually, Tolkien noted several times that the relationship between an officer and a private, like in World War I, was the inspiration behind Frodo and Sam's relationship dynamic. So Sean Astin is a decade older than Elijah Wood. So in the films, we get these like kind of big brother vibes of Sam always looking out for Frodo, who's always lost and clumsily getting himself into trouble. So, and as you said, he's kind of just always looking for help, and he's shouting out to Aragorn and Gandalf, and Sam's just always there to back him up and to kind of just be his guiding light almost. And it's kind of hard to.
I was going to say, Sam. I think when I first watched Lord of the Rings, I didn't see the massive age gap between Frodo and Sam, but I think it was just. To me, it just seemed like a character difference. Like Frodo was supposed to be the young, naive one, but almost did feel like a lord, whereas Sam was like of a lower class. But I never saw like a huge age gap. I just kind of felt like Sam had seen more of the world, which he actually hasn't. But he seems more kind of experienced in like the Shire and knowing gardening and the outdoors, where Frodo's like stuck in his books and stuff. And I don't know. I think it was just like the fresh face Frodo, and Sam was kind of more of a.
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
Frodo was more book smart, and Sam was more
street smart.
Street smart. And as you
smart.
As you said, he's more knowledgeable in the world of gardening, but that was like the most important thing to all hobbits. So he's basically
and drinking.
Yeah, he was good at both. But yeah, the two most important pastimes: drinking and gardening. Don't drink before you garden, though. That could be disastrous for hobbits.
Drink out the ale! These men are thirsty!
Now, I was looking into different reasons why Jackson really made this decision and this to try and change this whole dynamic, but from all the things I've read online, there wasn't an exact, there wasn't a direct quote from Jackson saying the reason was this. So, but a lot of people online were kind of speculating, and it's kind of assumed that it was to reach a certain target audience of around 15 to 25 of these moviegoers, and also to easily show the camaraderie and the friendship between these four hobbits. And also another reason might be to dodge the kind of master-servant role, which might not be the most PC nowadays as it would have been back then. But I do want to read you something cool that Peter Jackson had to say about casting Elijah Wood for this role. And so this is a quote from Peter Jackson. He says, "Frodo was a very, very important character in the movies, but he's also a very difficult character to play and to cast. We were convinced that Frodo was going to be an English actor because we wanted the hobbits to basically be English as Tolkien really wrote them. So we went to London and we started auditioning. We couldn't think of any actor to play Frodo. We had nobody in mind. We thought it would be an unknown actor, a young kid. We were in London auditioning for about a month, and we'd probably seen 300 Frodos. There were 2 or 3 that were okay, but nothing magical, because Frodo had to be magical. Every time the casting room door opened and some nervous young actor would come in, we were saying, is this going to be Frodo? And you sort of know within 10 seconds that it wasn't really Frodo. It was a worry, but we were plugging on. And then our casting director said to us one day, a package has just come in the mail. It's from Elijah Wood. It was a videotape, a VHS. I had heard Elijah's name, but I'd never seen a film he'd done. I actually had no face for Elijah. I didn't know what he looked like. So we put the videotape in. Elijah was in LA and heard that we were in London and we were not going to come to LA. He really wanted to get this role. So he hired a dialect coach to teach him the accent. He'd gone to the local costume hire and got some cheesy kind of Hobbit costume on. He'd gone into the trees somewhere behind his house with a friend, and he just videotaped his own audition. He didn't have our script, so he was reading from the book. He was just doing Frodo parts from the book. I just put this videotape in, and literally, not having known who Elijah Wood was, I just thought, he's wonderful. He's absolutely great. And so Elijah cast himself. So
Wow,
that's pretty cool,
it's
isn't
incredible. Yeah, it's such dedication. Buying the fake outfit, going into the woods, and then actually reading
coach.
from the book. Yeah, getting the dialect coach. But the coolest thing about that is just reading from the book. Like, he really put himself in the shop window, because...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know. It didn't seem like there was a possibility for any American actors to even audition. But one thing I just wanted to note as well, all the reasons that you suggested that Peter Jackson went for Elijah, the main reason I would have thought wasn't suggested there at all. I would have thought that the fact that, well, two things. First of all, if the main character, big blue eyes. No, I just think that if the main character, or the main character is going to be 50, then it kind of, it makes you think, like, why does this guy not have more experience of the outside world? So I think that'd be a bit weird to you. But also, you're supposed to be, as a viewer, thrust into the eyes of the main character, and Frodo is kind of astonished by this world and this adventure that he's going on, and you're supposed to be as, like,
mesmerized,
as mesmerized, but also just, you're supposed to be as naive and just bewildered as Frodo is, as he's, stepping out of the comfort of his own home. We're stepping out of the comfort of our home to go watch this incredible movie, and Frodo, you're supposed to be like the main character. Like, most origin stories are like, the guy doesn't know what's going on. He has to ask questions. He's constantly asking Gandalf for stuff. But it would be weird to have, like, a 50-year-old experienced man like, Gandalf, what is that thing over there?
I agree to an extent, but then also you could easily have a 50-year-old hobbit who's, like, basically lived all his life in this tiny little area that he's never gone outside the borders. It'd be like, someone who grew up and was 50 years of age back in the early 1900s, and he, if you can see someone like someone stumbling into like an unknown tribe or something, that they are the opposite way around, someone from this tribe that's out in Papua New Guinea 100 years ago, and then they come into the Western civilized world, and they're like, amazement. They could be in their 80s, this person. They're like, oh my God, these guys have motorized cars. And, so I don't know if I completely agree, but I do think that, I do like the idea of just this kind of, like, wet behind the ears, naive, bewildered kind of.
But I think the fact you said it was originally supposed to be for audiences between what you say, like 15 and 25 or so. Like, he is trying to put you in the eyes of the main character who is supposed to be going on this journey. So
sure,
yeah, I think he wanted to resonate with the audience as much as possible.
Yeah, I think so. But unfortunately, this change of age does cause, like I said, a bit of a domino effect, resulting in some negative impacts on the character of Frodo in the movie. Now, before I get into all that kind of stuff, there are some certain things that they added to Frodo's character that enhance it maybe for the movies. And I don't know, Dave, if you saw this, just a couple of weeks ago, they released a long, like, it was about 45 minutes, an interview with all the hobbits that they'd got together, and Legolas as well, I should say their actual real names, Orlando Bloom, and the four boys. They were together in Liverpool. I don't know what it was. It wasn't a Comic-Con, but I'm not sure what it was for, but they were all there up on stage. I think you posted about it on Twitter. Did you watch that interview?
No, I didn't. I only saw a part of it. I thought it was a Comic-Con or some sort of convention, but maybe
so
not
did I.
Comic-Con.
But that's what I thought it was initially, because I saw some photos from it first. But I just watched the interview there, and Dominic Monaghan, who plays Merry, actually shared an interesting story about they asked people. Somebody had a really good question from the audience. They asked, "Is there anything that you or your character had to do which you didn't think it was the right thing for that character to do?" Or basically something like that. It was kind of an interesting question. And Dominic Monaghan said that it wasn't that he didn't want it to happen, but there was something about his character that he was upset by or wanted to change, which was the fact that in the books, when they are sitting outside the doors of Durin and they're trying to crack the code, it is Merry who is the one that pipes up and says, what do you suppose it means when it says speak friend and enter? And then
Yeah.
at that moment, Gandalf kind of goes, oh, it doesn't say speak friend. It says say friend and enter. He got the translation wrong. And so say and speak are very similar. So he mixed them up. And when he said say friend and enter, it was like, okay. So it was Merry that helped him come to that realization. And then he said, Dominic Monaghan said that he was there. And I think it was Philippa Boyens came over to him at one point and put his arm around him and just said, look, you know that line about you helping Gandalf crack the code? We're actually going to give that to Elijah. And because we want him to build more of a rapport with Gandalf and a more of a close bond before Gandalf ends up getting separated from the Fellowship, and we want them to show like they've got this closer relationship kind of thing. And so Dominic Monaghan was like, yeah, but Frodo's got loads to do in this movie and I've got like nothing to do, so could I not? And so he said he wasn't really happy about that, but you know, he understood the reason for it. And it's kind of funny because I was like, that is interesting. And so it is something that didn't happen in the books, but they gave that to Frodo to try, and it's not really necessarily making his character like stronger or braver, but it is kind of just giving a little bit more, fleshing out his character a little bit more, showing that closeness with Gandalf and that close relationship that they had. So that was just something that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, no, I think that if they had done it the way Dominic had thought he was going to do it, I kind of like the idea if they did give the hobbits their actual parts. There's probably a lot of other things as well that's been switched around to give to Frodo and stuff. But yeah, like that would have fleshed out Merry's character so much more, because even if you've seen the movies just once or 10 times, you always kind of think of those are the two stupid hobbits, or Merry's the slightly smarter one, but they're the comical relief, and there's not many tearjerker moments until the final movie. But like even just showing that kind of level of intelligence from Merry would have been very interesting at the start, and then you're not going, oh right, I'm just looking at Frodo and I can forget about the other three. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
exactly. Like even as I said at the start there, I said that in the books Pippin was 29, Merry was 37, so he was a lot older than Pippin as well, and he does get really kind of like Pippified, I suppose, in the movies. You know, you kind of just they get blended into one character, especially at the beginning when they've got that like fireworks rocket scene. And then Gandalf catches them both and makes them, you know, wash the dishes and stuff. It's very kind of just putting them both into the same bracket and saying, okay, these are the two guys who are always up to mischief. And like really, when you first meet Merry, he's really independent. He's very well traveled. He's the one that's kind of very happy to go off, and he goes off to Crick Hollow before Frodo, and he kind of buys Frodo a house, gets it ready for him, and all this kind of stuff. And like, so he's really good at just kind of, you know, getting stuff done. And
real estate agency.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
but again, like Jackson has to make a choice with time that he's creating the movie,
with and the time that is given to him.
Yes, with the time that is given to him, I can understand if there's a choice to give an extra bit of dialogue to Frodo that interacts with Gandalf. Absolutely do it. And also, like, he didn't realize, well, he did know at the time of making these that they were going to be the best things he's ever done. He said it repeatedly while he was on set. Like that these movies would be like his legacy. But I don't think he would know the nuance of the amount of details that us fans would be breaking down 25 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
So like obviously we're going, oh god, I wish he gave that line to Merry, but like when you're looking at it from his perspective in the beginning, he's like, right, I have a cast of 9 main characters, and that's just
just
9, the Fellowship. Yeah, it's just the Fellowship, and then like you've got loads more to deal with. It's impossible to give them all their independent roles.
It was the impossible task, but you know, he did it anyway. But we're going to move on. So as I was saying, there are some changes, and some of these changes are for good. Some of the changes maybe not so much, because like, I mean, that change, as I said there, it just kind of fleshed out his Frodo's relationship with Gandalf. It didn't actually give him any moment of bravery, and to be honest, Frodo gets very few moments of bravery. He only, for example, draws his sword in anger a few times in the trilogy, and once is to try and attack Sam. So I mean, that's not great. That being said, we shouldn't think that they made Frodo out to be a completely terrible character in the movies, and we should remember how he did show one of the most impressive moments of bravery in the entire trilogy at the Council of Elrond, where he offered to be the one to take the ring to Mordor. Now remember, this is a little dude that just found out he was holding the most powerful and most evil object in the world, and then looked to his friend, a wizard, someone who he considered to be the wisest being in Middle-earth, and he offered it to him to keep it safe. And Gandalf turns down the ring and shows that even he is afraid to take it. And then he leaves his home, setting out on a quest to take the ring to Rivendell. Again, a journey that was not supposed to be as dangerous as it ended up being. But once he was there, after being stabbed by a Nazgul and getting a taste of just how awful and powerful this ring was, Frodo, again, he just stepped up to that challenge. And seeing how it was already causing strife amongst the men and the dwarves and elves, this brave hobbit offered to finish the journey. And it was a singular moment of courage that nobody else at the council could match. And if people say he didn't know what he was getting himself into, remember Boromir's explanation of what to expect on the journey to Mordor. And, one does not just walk into Mordor. So I also think that they do a good job of showing that he's carrying the embodiment of all evil around his neck and is constantly besieged by an increasingly dark and powerful desire to give in to what the ring wishes, and in doing so to doom all of Middle-earth to darkness. So there's that too. He's going through quite a journey, our Frodo.
Yeah. I do think, though, there is a little part of me that, yes, of course I believe you, or I agree with you, I mean, but there's a little part of me that believes when, during the Council of Elrond, he almost says, I will take it just so everyone will shut up. Yeah, just because he's like getting so... I don't know, his ADHD is going crazy. He's like, everyone's talking. He's like, okay, fine, I'll take it. And then like Gandalf almost has a look of like, oh, for fuck's sake. It's not like, oh, look at this brave. It's like kind of like, oh, Jesus, lads, this is the last thing we wanted. But at the same time,
no, we can't be saying that
now. No, I don't even believe it myself. But you know what I mean.
No,
I'm trying to come at it from
I agree.
From first time perspective of watching the Lord of the Rings.
Sure. So anyway, getting on to the main meat and bones, we're introduced to Frodo as a brave and a bold hobbit in the book. And he isn't afraid to break the mold or ignore traditions. And he's known as being an adventurous hobbit, taking after Bilbo. He's a scholar. He's learned in poetry, lore, and languages. He's brave, and we see him stand his ground on many occasions, even when it seems hopeless. He defends his friends in the Barrows. He faces ring wraiths multiple times and even stands up to Shelob. And he basically always stands out for being wiser and braver than the rest of the hobbits. He often doubts himself, but he almost always chooses the right path in the end. He's kind of like the ideal protagonist who is not overly powerful like some king or a wizard, so he's quite relatable, but he's also the best of the hobbits, and he's wise and brave. Even if his bravery is sometimes not enough, he's not a coward, and he would actually die for his friends. And we actually get to see this demonstrated in chapter 8 of the Fellowship of the Rings, when the hobbits get trapped by a Barrow Wight, which is this Nazgul type creature. If you're not sure what a Barrow Wight is, go listen to our recent Barrow Wight episode, which goes into nice detail and explains it perfectly. So anyway, they fall under a spell, and this is the hobbits, the 4 hobbits, they fall under a spell from this Barrow Wight, and they lose all consciousness. And when Frodo wakes up, he realizes that they're all in trouble. And in a moment of panic, Frodo thinks about using his ring to escape and leaving his friends behind. But as we said before, Frodo is not a coward, and just like his friends are loyal to him, he is also loyal to them. So just going to read you a quick quote from this chapter 8. Frodo heard behind his head a creaking and scraping sound. Raising himself on one arm, he looked and saw now in the pale light that they were in a kind of passage which behind them turned a corner. Round the corner, a long arm was groping, walking on its fingers towards Sam, who was lying nearest, and towards the hilt of the sword that lay upon him. At first, Frodo felt as if he had indeed been turned into stone by the incantation. Then a wild thought of escape came to him. He wondered if he put on the ring, whether the Barrow Wight would miss him, and he might find some way out. He thought of himself running free over the grass, grieving for Merry and Sam and Pippin, but free and alive himself. Gandalf would admit that there had been nothing else he could do. But the courage that had been awakened in him was now too strong. He could not leave his friends so easily. He wavered, groping in his pocket, and then fought with himself again. And as he did so, the arm crept nearer. Suddenly resolve hardened in him, and he seized a short sword that lay beside him, and kneeling, he stooped low over the bodies of his companions. With what strength he had, he hewed at the crawling arm near the wrist, and broke off the hand. But at the same moment, the sword splintered up to the hilt. There was a shriek, and the light vanished. In the dark, there was a snarling noise. Now, I got goosebumps myself reading that. Now, ultimately, it is Tom Bombadil who comes along and saves the day, but Frodo showed courage in that moment. And again, as he is the protagonist
Mhm.
and he's shown to be the best Hobbit, it's natural in the books that he be the one to wake up first and to show courage and find a way to save his friends. So that's like just one small glimpse of something that happened that we don't get a chance to see at all in the movies. And as I said again, there, all four hobbits are in this under this incantation, and it's Frodo who just kind of, maybe again because he has the ring, he has this powerful artifact. Maybe that's the reason he wakes up before the rest of them. But whatever it is, he's the one that kind of comes to and figures out a way to solve them. And there's just this like groping hand like going around, and it's just like such a freaky scene. But there's actually loads of cool. If you look up the scene online, or if you look up anything about it, there's loads of artwork that's kind of dictating this scene, and it's some really cool ones, some really freaky ones.
I also think that obviously the whole Barrow Whites scene was taken out or not included in the film, and that could actually be a big part of why,
as was John Bombadil, who also
Peter Jackson had,
maybe couldn't be in that as well.
But I mean, he's probably exactly. So like, I'd love to know where the train of thought came for Peter Jackson. Like, what did he cut first? So he was probably like, right, I'm going to cut out Tom Bombadil. But if I cut out Tom Bombadil, how do we get out of the Barrow Whites? Okay, maybe we'll try and include the Barrow Whites, but then like, how do I deal with Frodo being such a scaredy cat, naive person? Like, how's that going to work? Maybe I'll just cut the Barrow Whites altogether. Do you know, like,
I assume it was a very easy decision to cut the Barrow Whites because you already had the Nazgul, which were these similar kind of horror creatures. Obviously, we know Peter Jackson was into horror movies, and that's basically what he was famous for before Lord of the Rings. So we knew he was definitely going to want to include this horror element, and he got that with the Nazgul. And I think that was probably enough, especially this all happened in book one. So he's like, okay, I've already gotten book one. I've got the battle with the troll in Moria. I've got the Nazgul. I've got the Uruk-hai.
But then we obviously know that he didn't like chain himself to like each book. Like, obviously the end of the first film is the beginning of the second book.
Yeah.
So, he could have made it work somehow, but he did not.
Now, we can contrast this type of Frodo and these kind of actions that he just has here, where he kind of, I really like that they kind of show that he has this internal dialogue. He's like, oh, I can imagine myself escaping on my own and running free across the grass. And I can imagine myself mourning for my friends, and Gandalf reassuring me, oh, don't worry, there's nothing you could do. It's so cool. And then it's like, and the courage was ignited inside him and all this kind of stuff. So it's like,
the courage was too large.
Yeah, exactly. He said the courage that had been awakened in him was now too strong. That's such a cool line. Like, and it makes you just kind of, small little details like that just make you kind of, I don't know, just have this completely different idea of Frodo as a person and as a character. And again, as I said, you contrast that with Frodo from the movies, who has much less backbone, and he's shown again and again to just fall victim to his fears and his weaknesses. And like, the success that he has is often due to his friends and his companions being willing to help him out when he falls short. So it's like, it's always like his friends who are the heroes saving him all the time, which is a big shift from the book version of Frodo, who actually is the one who come to his friend's aid.
Well, that's a big swap. Like,
huge.
The fact that he was the one to wake up and rescue his friends from the Barrow Whites. There was no scene that was similar to that at all in any of the Lord of the Rings movies. So, but again, like, I was going to say this, or I was probably going to wait until the end of the podcast, but I was just going to say, like, I still wouldn't change anything. It does tell the same story in a completely different way, but I still love both versions of the story. I like the naive Frodo we have in the film, but also book Frodo is so cool.
Book Frodo is badass, and you're going to love him so much more by the end of this podcast. But anyway, let's keep going.
Then you're going to love
me. So we spoke about the Barrow White for a moment there. I just wanted to put another scene, which we mentioned. The Barrow Whites are similar to the Nazgul, and I want to talk about the scene with the Nazgul now, which is another one that was changed. And again, it's another one that what happens in the movie, Dave, with Frodo when the Nazgul attack at Weathertop?
Yeah, like we see the courage of all the other hobbits get in front of Frodo.
Yeah.
And Frodo, like, they all pull out their swords, and of course the camera pans to Frodo, and he looks like the most scared of them all.
Yeah.
And Sam even tries to fight with his sword.
Sure.
He gets pushed aside, and then the other two hobbits are separated completely. And then this is obviously just something that, anti-Frodo people always cling on to. The fact that he just drops his sword, trips over a rock, and like wails as he like falls down. It seems cowardly.
I
But,
mean, this is one of the things that I don't really understand the reason for the change. Now, if Peter Jackson had wanted just to show how terrified Frodo was, that's fine.
I get that.
But I think he should have made all the hobbits terrified in the same way, because as you said, the other three stand their ground. The other three, as you said, like Sam actually charges and attacks, and then he gets like kind of knocked unconscious for a second, or just kind of thrown out of the way. And the same with the other two, and Frodo is the only one that kind of just completely whimpers and falls back. So now I'm just going to read you a very short passage from the book, and we're going to see how different this is. Their eyes fell on him and pierced him as they rushed towards him. Desperate, he drew his own sword, and it seemed to him that it flickered red, as if it was a firebrand. Two of the figures halted. The third was taller than the others. His hair was long and gleaming, and on his helm was a crown. In one hand he held a long sword, and in the other a knife. Both the knife and the hand that held it glowed with a pale light. He sprang forward and bore down on Frodo. At that moment Frodo threw himself forward on the ground and heard himself crying aloud, "O Elbereth Githoniel!" At the same time he struck at the feet of his enemy. A shrill cry rang out in the night, and he felt a pain like a dart of poisoned ice pierce his left shoulder. So that is a quote from chapter 11 of the first Lord of the Rings book. Now, what happens there is that Frodo is afraid in both scenes, but in the book, he still tries to face this enemy, and he also
still swings at him.
He swings at him. We actually find out at a later point that Aragorn finds later on a piece of cloth of the Nazgul's coat that has been cut, and he's like, "Oh, this is from Frodo's blade." That actually he cut like some of the cloth of the Nazgul, and then Aragorn says something like, I can't remember. He says something like, "I'm afraid that's the only damage that was done. He didn't actually do any damage." And then Aragorn says, again, this is off the top of my head now, I can't remember. Aragorn says something like, "That's the only damage that his sword did." Although the words of Elbereth Githoniel were more damaging to the Nazgul than the actual swipe from the sword. But so Frodo said these elvish words that kind of just came to him like a spiritual sort of moment, and he also swiped with the sword. It's completely different to what happens in the movies. And as I said, I don't really understand the reason for change there. But what's your impressions?
Well, first of all, you said that Aelbereth, like this comes to him. He doesn't even know what he's saying. Isn't that correct? Like
he does know a lot of, like, I mean, we see it. We see in a few chapters before that like when he's speaking to Gildor the elf. We're going to actually mention that in a moment now as well. He does have a lot of knowledge about,
but I mean, he doesn't understand the power of it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think he doesn't understand the power of it, and it's kind of, he knows a lot of lore. He knows a lot of Elvish. And so that's fine. But I don't think he understands the power really. There are a couple of moments that I think he just kind of is overcome by this sort of, I don't know, as I said, it's almost like a spiritual reaction.
It's like speaking in tongues.
Yeah.
But they actually, we've talked about this before in a previous podcast, probably a long time ago, how the power of names is a great power in Middle Earth. Like obviously Aragorn yells out Elendil. It happens a few times. You hear it in the movies a few times, but it is like something to kind of rally the troops around you, but also like give yourself more power. Sure. And like, when Frodo shouts out Aelbereth, he does some sort of damage to the Witch King or to the Witch King.
Takes off 10 XP.
Yeah, exactly. He might have reduced his power a tiny bit, but I do understand why Peter Jackson admitted that from your explanation. Like maybe he just wants to show the sheer terror in the youngest looking Hobbit. But and also if he did shout that thing, people would be like, what? He probably just didn't want to get into that whole explanation thing.
Maybe. And again, as I said, maybe because Frodo looked like the youngest of them all pretty much. It's maybe, and because Sam was, he was there as Frodo's protector, really, and he was, as I said, he does kind of give off Big Brother vibes in the movies. So again, that's just one more moment.
Yeah, I think another thing throughout the whole movie, or the three movies, is just the fact that because Frodo is the ring bearer, you're supposed to kind of feel, or Peter Jackson is trying to find little quirks that show that he's holding on to some sort of power or
Sure.
that he has a connection when he sees evil. So when he sees the Witch King, it's not even just terror like anyone sees the Witch King. It's kind of like, I'm being drawn to you for some reason, or I have a connection with you, and that's what's making me like almost lose control of my fingers, dropping the sword, and lose control of my feet.
Point.
So
yeah.
I get a little bit of that as well. Like Frodo's always doing things that you feel like, why is he doing that? But it's to kind of make you feel like, look at all he's carrying, and that's what I get out of that scene.
Back there.
Man, the meatloaf!
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And again, I suppose it's almost like Frodo is carrying this precious, important thing. It's almost like the Nazgul attack, and one of the 4 hobbits is holding a baby. So obviously that one hobbit would be the one to kind of like,
and he drops
it to the back. He doesn't drop the baby. He drops the sword. The baby is the ring. He's just, he's holding that tightly in his hand. So
that's true. Yeah, like protect the baby, protect the mother at all costs.
Right. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually probably one of the biggest arguments used against Frodo being a hero. And this is something that we see in like memes and jokes quite a lot, especially on Twitter. And this is talking about the fact that he ultimately failed at the last hurdle when it was time to cast the ring into the fire. And I'm sure you've seen a few memes as well, Dave. I think there's a couple where, you know, it's like showing everyone bowing down to like Frodo, and it's like one scene earlier he's like, the ring is mine, basically causing causing darkness to cover the whole of Middle Earth. And he's just like, anyway.
I think the best one is like that scene taken out of The Office where it's like Michael shaking the hands of his former boss, and then it's just like, I think it's like Elrond's head or someone like, congratulating Frodo for like destroying the ring, and Frodo knowing that he actually wanted to keep it at the last minute.
Yeah, so I just want to talk about that whole thing for a moment, because again, I have seen loads of memes that I think are hilarious and they're really good. But the problem with those memes is they can kind of sort of eke themselves into your like subconscious, and you kind of start to believe that's actually that is a good valid reason for why Frodo is a complete failure, and if it weren't for the intervention of Sam and Gollum, he actually would have let Middle Earth fall into ruin. Now, I feel in the movies we've seen Frodo fail to control his emotions and to show his weaknesses just so many times that we feel like this is just one more failure to add to the long list, and it's also one more moment of heroism for Sam. And of course, I don't want to take away any of that heroism from Sam, but I do want to provide a bit more clarity on this moment. So I'm going to read a short piece from chapter 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring. So this is at the very, very beginning of our entire story. And in this scene, Gandalf has just explained to Frodo that this is the one ring that he had been looking for. "But why not destroy it, as you say should have been done long ago," cried Frodo. "If you had warned me, or even sent me a message, I would have done away with it." "Would you? How would you do that? Have you ever tried?" "No, but I suppose one could hammer it or melt it." "Try," said Gandalf. "Try now." Frodo drew the ring out of his pocket again and looked at it. It now appeared plain and smooth, without mark or design that he could see. The gold looked very fair and pure, and Frodo thought how rich and beautiful was its colour, how perfect was its roundness. It was an admirable thing, and altogether precious. When he took it out, he had intended to fling it from him into the very hottest part of the fire, but he found now that he could not do so, not without a great struggle. He weighed the ring in his hand, hesitating and forcing himself to remember all that Gandalf had told him. And then, with an effort of will, he made a movement, as if to cast it away. But he found that he had put it back in his pocket. Gandalf laughed grimly. "You see, already you too, Frodo, cannot easily let it go, nor will to damage it. And I could not make you, except by force, which would break your mind. But as for breaking the ring, force is useless. Even if you took it and struck it with a heavy sledgehammer, it would make no dint in it. It cannot be unmade by your hands or by mine. Your small fire, of course, would not melt even ordinary gold. This ring has already passed through it unscathed and even unheated. But there is no smith's forge in this shire that could change it at all. Not even the anvils and furnaces of the dwarves could do that. It has been said that dragon fire could melt and consume the rings of power, but there is not now any dragon left on earth in which the old fire is hot enough. Nor was there ever any dragon, not even Ancalagon the Black, who could have harmed the one ring, the ruling ring, for that was made by Sauron himself." Pretty cool.
So good.
Now, I'm going to get to my main point, but I included that last part in the end, talking about all the heats of the different fires, because it's interesting to think about that line from the movie or from the book as well. It's quite cool. And I always wondered like why Gandalf said that and why it would be quite cool coming straight out of a fire. And he was so confident. And the reason is that this fire is not even able to start having any sort of an effect on the ring. This ring is just,
can't even heat it.
he said like not even
It's crazy.
Callaghan the Black. If anybody, all you nerds out there, you know who Callaghan the Black is, and not even he would have been able to, destroy the One Ring. His fire was not hot enough. So it's so cool.
And if you don't know who Callaghan the Black is, check out our Dragons episode where you'll hear all about him. But yes, on that, first of all, it's such a cool quote, and it's awesome to hear Gandalf mentioning Callaghan the Black. But it's also so cool how it's Frodo that has that effect where he thinks he's cast away the ring, but actually it's right here in my pocket.
Wait, it's here in my pocket.
So the main reason I wanted to talk about that was exactly this, that we've been shown at the very beginning of the story that Frodo, for all his desire to do good, he cannot overcome the power of the ring. Like even from a comfortable seat in Bag End, he cannot throw it into a tiny little fire, which he's already seen just a moment before. It will do absolutely no harm to the ring. And he just can't control it or himself. So multiply by 100 the strength of the ring and the hold it has over him. And at a time where Frodo is completely famished and starved and drained, both physically and mentally. And then we hold the fact that he can't destroy the ring as a reason to judge him. And it's like, this shouldn't even enter a discussion, And
it's also, the ring is in where it's most powerful, or that's where the evil of the ring has most of its effect at this current time, because it's in the land of Mordor where it was created, and Frodo's at his weakest point. That's where it's most powerful.
Exactly. So the fact that we see he's sitting in Bag End and he can't throw it into a fire, he can't destroy it. When we see then he's there not able to do it, it shouldn't come as a surprise. That should just be like, oh yes, of course. And I'm just going to read a very short quote. It's just 2 sentences here from Tolkien in letter 192. He says, Frodo deserved all honor because he spent every drop of his power and will and body, and that was just sufficient to bring him to the destined point and no further. Few others, possibly no others of his time, would have got so far. So that's Tolkien himself talking about Frodo, saying he got just as far as he needed to be, and then it was fate that Gollum ended up destroying the ring. So that's what was intended to happen all along. So
But also, like, when we discussed about the memes talking about how, like, Frodo was just willing to destroy the ring, that is one of the biggest changes from the books as well, that it is Gollum that takes the ring and he just slips in, whereas in the movie, Peter Jackson changes it so that Frodo does actually strike up this tremendous amount of will, power, and courage to actually go over and try and end this whole thing, whether it's self-sacrifice or if he's just, trying to push.
Yeah, again, it just looks like he's trying to get the ring back.
I don't know. I feel like he's pushing. I don't know. Yeah, it's perspective.
Yeah, I know.
I suppose.
Exactly. It's just that's the point. It's perspective. It's not clear. It's not like, oh, Gollum bites the ring off his finger and suddenly has a moment of clarity and he goes, oh my God, I need to just go and push that guy now. He doesn't push him. He runs up. He's they're wrestling for the ring really again. But
I think with the music and everything, you just feel like this is it. It's epic. It's an epic ending. Epic, no one can say anything about it. No more memes. Just kidding. If you want more memes, actually check out at melon_heads. We're sharing a buttload of memes there. So
get over and like and share.
The ring is mine.
Moving on, Dave. We're going to talk about the decision to leave the Shire. So Frodo deciding it's time to get out and stretch his legs and move to safer, to get away from danger, really, I suppose, because he knows that the enemy's coming for him. So in the movie, what happens? It's Gandalf who has to explain to Frodo that he must leave the Shire and that his name is not safe anymore and that he needs to take the ring and get to a safe place. But in the book, however, it's actually Frodo who suggests to Gandalf that he should leave the Shire and take the ring away from the people that he cares about. He understands that he's not safe in the Shire. Upon hearing this suggestion, Gandalf remarks that hobbits really are the most amazing creatures. So again, I'm just going to read you another little thing from the book because again, we could talk all day, but we need to go to the source material and really just see what's going on. Well, said Gandalf at last, what are you thinking about? Have you decided what to do? Frodo responds, as far as I understand what you have said, I suppose I must keep the ring and guard it, at least for the present, whatever it may do to me. Whatever it may do, it will be slow to evil, if you keep it with that purpose, said Gandalf. I hope so, said Frodo, but I hope that you may find some other better keeper soon. But in the meanwhile, it seems that I am a danger to all that live near me. I cannot keep the ring and stay here. I ought to leave Bag End, leave the Shire, leave everything and go away, he sighed. I should like to save the Shire if I could, though there have been times when I thought the inhabitants too stupid and dull for words, and have felt that an earthquake or an invasion of dragons might be good for them. But I don't feel like that now. I feel that as long as the Shire lies behind, safe and comfortable, I shall find wandering more bearable. I shall know that somewhere there is a firm foothold, even if my feet cannot stand there. Of course, I have sometimes thought of going away, but I imagine that as a kind of holiday, a series of adventures like Bilbo's, or better, ending in peace. But this would mean exile, a flight from danger into danger, drawing it after me, and I suppose I must go alone, if I am to do that and save the Shire. But I feel very small, and very uprooted, and, well, desperate. The enemy is so strong and terrible. My dear Frodo, exclaimed Gandalf, hobbits really are amazing creatures, as I have said before. You can learn all there is to know about their ways in a month, and yet after 100 years, they can still surprise you at a pinch. I hardly expected to get such a good answer, not even from you, but Bilbo made no mistake in choosing his heir, though he little thought how important it would prove. I am afraid you are right. The ring will not be able to stay hidden in the Shire much longer, and for your own sake, as well as for others, you will have to go and leave the name of Baggins behind you. That name will not be safe to have outside the Shire or in the wild. I will give you a travelling name now. When you go as Mr. Underhill.
Very good. Yeah, I love that. And it seems like when you actually read it and then you watch the movies, you kind of feel like the whole hobbits truly are amazing creatures line seems to be so out of context, because it's basically Gandalf telling Frodo everything to do, and then Frodo just says something like, maybe I should, cross-country travel. So
yeah, I can cut across country easily enough. Whatever, yeah. And then Gandalf's like,
yeah,
you're
Gandalf's
so
like,
amazing, Frodo.
You genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what
It's
Gandalf
funny,
says
but
to him,
like,
and stay off the road. He goes, I can cut across country easily enough.
yeah. I think in the context of the movie is supposed to be just like how well Frodo takes all the information and how like willing he is.
Yeah, I never thought it was out of place, really.
No, I don't, and I still don't. I think it's just the fact that he's not like, oh no, like I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Like straight away he's like thrust into it, and he understands the importance of this mission.
Is it not just class that in the book he's just like, do you know what? I've come to this decision myself that I need to get out of here, and I'm a danger to myself and to everybody around me, and I need to get out here. I need to go, and also I need to go on my own and all this kind of stuff. It's just, again, it's this. It sounds like it's coming from a very wise person, exactly, and that's.
But also just I love how Gandalf is just like, what are you thinking about there? What do you think you should do? And then Frodo's like, right, well, this is what I should do. And then Gandalf is just like, he's kind of like a teacher trying to get an answer from people who say, yes, that is the correct answer. That is exactly what you should do.
Well, that does happen. I think it happens more than quite a few times actually, where Gandalf is kind of wants to see. He doesn't want to just tell them the answer. He wants to see what they're thinking and
to make them think.
So. Good old Gandalf. But yeah, again, one more reason that you kind of just, again, this is early on in the story, and we're just kind of starting to get an idea of who Frodo is as a person. And these are all small little, just, pebbles that kind of cause the avalanche of love for Frodo, which is what you get when you read the books. But anyway, just again, another short scene that was omitted when the hobbits are leaving the Shire is when they meet the Wood Elves. Obviously, in the extended editions of the Fellowship of the Ring, we get to see them just sort of spying the elves from a distance. But in the first book, we actually get a scene where they, hang out with them for a little while. So the elves are approaching, and the hobbits take cover, and they watch from a distance, and they listen to the elves singing, and Frodo is actually translating the words from the songs and telling them to the other hobbits. And as they have passed, the elves, as they've passed on, again, it's dark, and the hobbits are well hidden, and they think like, oh, we're fine here. They're not, and hobbits are known to be able to kind of sneak around and make no noise at all. But anyway, all the elves pass on, and then suddenly one elf just kind of turns around and looks back to the area, like a couple of 100 meters away where the hobbits have been hiding, and he smiles and he calls out saying, "Hello, Frodo." And he remarks that it's strange to see 3 hobbits so far abroad under the stars, and he asks what they're doing and where they're going. Now, why 3? Because Merry is not with them at this moment. And Frodo he's known to these elves, and they've seen him many times before with Bilbo, even if he did not know that he was being watched. So Frodo speaks a greeting in High Elven, and the elves are very impressed. So Frodo says, "I thank you indeed, Gildor Inglorian," said Frodo, bowing. "Elen sila lumen, omen tilvio." A star shines on the hour of our meeting, he added in the High Elven speech. "Be careful, friends," cried Gildor, laughing. "Speak no secrets. Here is a scholar in the ancient tongue. Bilbo was a good master. Hail, elf friend," he said, bowing to Frodo. "Come now with your friends and join our company." So Frodo shows that he is held in high regard by these elves, and they name him elf friend. He also shows that he can contend with their wit and holds his own in conversations with them. And at one point, Frodo asks Gildor for advice on what he should do next, and Gildor responds, "That Gandalf should be late does not bode well, but it is said, 'Do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger. The choice is yours, to go or wait.' And it is also said," answered Frodo, "Go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes." "Is it indeed?" laughed Gildor. "Elves seldom give advice unguarded, for advice is a dangerous gift, even when given from the wise to the wise, and all courses may run ill. But if you demand advice, I will for friendship's sake give it. I think you should go now, at once, without delay, and if Gandalf does not come before you set out, then I also advise this: do not go alone." So Frodo is able to kind of force some advice out of Gildor when he was originally unwilling to do so. So again, Frodo he has the level to go toe to toe with, conversationally with the wisest and the most, well learned of all peoples.
Yeah. So I love that little dig as well.
Yeah. I know, it's cool, isn't it? It's nice.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah. Man, Frodo.
So yeah. So how are you feeling about Frodo now, Dave? You get like, oh, what a boss.
Less bitchy, yeah.
Yeah.
Less bitchy. No, yeah, he's certainly cooler in the books. Just even these little interactions where he's held to such high esteem from the elves. Completely forgot about that scene altogether, where he's like welcome to the group. Where he gives them a little dig as well. Yeah, very cool. I can just imagine all the other the other 2 hobbits kind of cowering back and just being in pure awe and amazement over just seeing the elves, and Frodo's just like, "All right, you guys don't offer any advice at all." I don't know why he's got an Aussie accent.
Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
So again, just going to quickly mention one more scene. Now this is just going to be a very brief one, but we already mentioned that there was the big fight in Moria. We mentioned that earlier on, and we mentioned the troll, but we're just going to look at that for a moment, and we're going to look at how Frodo is actually not such a little scaredy cat in the books, but there's a quote here, and it says, "Boromir leaped forward and hewed at the arm with all his might." This is speaking about the troll now. "But his sword rang, glanced aside, and fell from his shaken hand. The blade was notched. Suddenly, and to his own surprise, Frodo felt a hot wrath blaze up in his heart. 'The Shire!' he cried, and springing beside Boromir, he stood and stabbed with Sting at the hideous foot. There was a bellow, and the foot jerked back, nearly wrenching Sting from Frodo's arm. Black drops dripped from the blade and smoked on the floor." So that's just a quote from chapter 5 in the Fellowship of the Ring. And what's interesting there is that, well, we know that movie Frodo is basically busy just kind of hiding behind some stones for most of the scene, and Merry and Pippin are kind of, saying, "Frodo, you go that way and we'll go this way and we'll help you."
Yeah.
And he doesn't really do anything else apart from get stabbed then later on. But you see the other, and you see the other hobbits fighting orcs, and Sam is using a pan. But again, Frodo's not really doing anything. And it's kind of annoying because in this book, this is really noteworthy because, I mean, we got to see that Boromir wasn't even able to pierce the hide of the orc. Not the orc, the troll. His blade actually got notched by just trying to hew at the arm, and Frodo was able to get Sting and hurt the troll with it, and he was able to draw blood. So it's just one more little moment. Now, he didn't kill the troll, but he still managed to harm it in a way that, like, he did more damage than Boromir, basically, which is
but it's just the whole element of courage that it has in the book, and it just doesn't have it in the film. I just think it's a complete movie choice, director's choice.
Yeah,
Is like,
it
I'm
is.
just going to trust you in the eyes of this character, just make him scared all the time that this is happening. And again, maybe it's the whole thing of like there's evil around him coming out of the ring. He almost feels like he has to protect it. He has to hide.
Yeah.
The rest of the gang is almost like you need to be
protected. Yeah.
I think they probably don't feel as much that they're just scared of dying. They feel like if Frodo gets captured, then
that's it. Yeah, I suppose they are always just terrified that Frodo could get caught, and that would mean doom for everyone. So it is kind of like, protect the package kind of thing. And
yeah.
I suppose I said, like, Frodo does get stabbed by the troll later on. Now that's not really the most courageous thing to get stabbed, but he does show courage where he goes down to try and help Aragorn, and he goes down to check on him and see if he's okay, and he puts himself in harm's way, and that's the reason he gets stabbed, because he's going over and he's like, again, Aragorn. So yeah, that's a little scene from him fighting in Moria. But moving on then to another scene where we get to see him with Shelob in Cirith So again, in the movie, what's happening? Frodo's just like running around in this mad panic, and he never like really confronts Shelob or goes up to her, and he does quite well, I suppose, to remember Galadriel's file, and he uses it with Sting to defend himself a couple of times, but the entire attack or the entire scene feels like just this terror scene where Frodo's just desperately trying to survive an attack. But again, I'm just gonna, as I've done before, just turn to the book and read out that scene in the book. So we see that it plays out quite differently. So Frodo and Sam are in Shelob's lair here, and they're being pursued by many spiders. They both turned and fled together, but even as they ran, Frodo looked back and saw with terror that at once the eyes came leaping up behind. The stench of death was like a cloud about him. "Stand, stand," he cried desperately. "Running is no use." Slowly the eyes crept nearer. "Galadriel," he called, and gathering his courage he lifted up the file once more. The eyes halted. For a moment their regard relaxed, as if some hint of doubt troubled them. Then Frodo's heart flamed within him, and without thinking what he did, whether it was folly or despair or courage, he took the file in his left hand, and with his right hand he drew his sword. Sting flashed out, and the sharp elven blade sparkled with silver light, but at its edges blue fire flickered. Then holding the star aloft, and the bright sword advanced, Frodo, Hobbit of the Shire, walked steadily down to meet the eyes. They wavered. Doubt came into them as the light approached. One by one they dimmed, and slowly they drew back. No brightness so deadly had ever afflicted them before. From sun and moon and star they had been safe underground, but now a star had descended into the very earth. Still it approached, and the eyes began to quail. One by one they all went dark. They turned away, and a great bulk, beyond the light's reach, heaved its huge shadow in between. They were gone.
Oh man, that's so cool. He's frightened Shelob away.
Yeah.
The spiders.
Yeah. Shelob are all of her little minions.
Yeah, her spawn.
Yeah, so again, and I love that just what it says, like, Frodo, Hobbit of the Shire, like giving him a title, like, walk steadily down to meet the eyes. And again, like in most of the scenes I've read so far, there's a moment where just there I read, it said, then Frodo's heart flamed within him. And then a moment ago, the fight in Moria, it says, Frodo felt a hot wrath blaze up in his heart. And there was another one as well that I did.
Harper.
There's like, you need to get the readies out.
A bit of Rennie, yeah.
But like just the way that Tolkien describes some of these scenes, and you just see this kind of inner burning and inner courage and inner bravery is always just kind of rising up inside of him, and he kind of goes like, oh, I don't know if this is courage or folly, but I'm just going to go and charge down into these spiders. And then there's also a moment where Sam shows his amazement for his master's bravery, which is, again, quite the opposite of what we always get in the movies, where Sam says, "Master, master," cried Sam. He was a big fan of Metallica, clearly. So, "Master, master," cried Sam. He was close behind, his own sword drawn and ready. "Stars and glory, but the elves would make a song of that if they ever heard of it. And may I live to tell them and hear them sing. But don't go on, master. Don't go down to that den. Now is our only chance. Let's get out of this foul hole." So again there, Sam is just like completely amazed that his master is just so brave. He's charging down these spiders. And he's saying even the elves would write a song about this. And so yeah, it's just, again, it's one more small little comment that just kind of makes you think, wow, Frodo just did something cool.
It's incredible. And I think they do have a small element of that in the movie. but it's probably not for the right reasons. It's more of just pure hatred and revenge, where Frodo's stuck in the web. Every part of the whole Shelob scene before that, it's like pure terror. He's like falling around the place. He keeps going like, he's making all these noises. But when he's in the web, and it's so terrifying with the spider coming in behind him, and he hears and sees Gollum, that's where I think the courage sparks up in him. And that's the part where I'm like, oh, I couldn't even do it. I think I would just lie there. But the way he's still like, out of pure hatred, he's just like trying to like get through this web and kill Gollum, or just get through it. I just feel like that's the ignition of that fire in his belly that he needs to, like, I don't know, to escape or go after Gollum.
No, I agree. That's a good point. But you also mentioned, you said it there yourself as well. You said the courage or the hatred. And I think it's more hatred that boils up inside of him rather than courage and bravery. And it's almost like he's so blind with rage, because maybe at that point he thinks that Gollum has taken the ring from him, so he wants to get that back, or else he's also just been like, that guy's betrayed me and whatever. So it's like his hatred is burning up, and he wants to and so he kind of almost just blindly forgets the Shelob is behind him. So, which is kind of crazy as well. And again, we see both in the book and in the film, Frodo does run away, and he is terrified when he first sees Shelob. But the difference is that Frodo realizes that running away is useless, and that's when he faces Shelob with his file and his sword, and successfully as well. And in the movie, he just keeps running in panic, and until he's out, and then unlike in the book, Sam is the only one to face Shelob. So it is just another small change. But again, there isn't any one of these changes that I'm like, that's the reason for his character difference. It's like they all kind of just pile up, and as I said, it's kind of this sort of eventual domino effect where we get this result at the end where we're kind of thinking, well, what do you think of Frodo? Oh, he's just obviously clearly weak, and he has to rely on all of his friends to help him out. But
it's just a different character. It's the same name. It's just a completely different character.
It is. The next thing we're going to talk about is Gollum's attack at Mount Doom. So, as I've done before, just turn to the book and read out that scene in the book. "Down, down," he gasped, clutching his hand to his breast, so that beneath the cover of his leather shirt he clasped the ring. "Down, you creeping thing, and out of my path. Your time is at an end. You cannot betray me or slay me now." Then suddenly, as before, under the eaves of the Emyn Muil, Sam saw these two rivals with other vision. A crouching shape, scarcely more than the shadow of a living thing. A creature now wholly ruined and defeated, yet filled with a hideous lust and rage. And before it stood stern, untouchable now by pity, a figure robed in white, but at its breast it held a wheel of fire. Out of the fire there spoke a commanding voice. "Be gone, and trouble me no more. If you touch me ever again, you shall be cast yourself into the fire of doom." The crouching shape backed away, terror in its blinking eye, and yet at the same time insatiable desire. Then the vision passed, and Sam saw Frodo standing, hand on breast, his breath coming in great gasps, and Gollum at his feet, resting on his knees with his wide splayed hands upon the ground. So that's what happens in the books.
Cool quote.
And in the film, we get Frodo being like, "You swore!" And he's like, "Smeagol lied." And then Sam throws the rock at Smeagol's head. And it's like, so, again, it's just completely...
Very different, yeah.
Yeah, so...
But it's kind of hard to imagine movie Frodo in the state that he was in, barely conscious, like barely able to move, suddenly just like create, or in Sam's mind, creating a wheel of fire vision. It just kind of would have been weird.
Exactly. Well, the vision part may be true, but also, as I said, like these kind of small domino effects of the way we see his character play out, ultimately you get to this final scene, and it's like, Peter Jackson's like, well, obviously we can't have Frodo standing up to him and showing that sort of bravery or that level of just kind of speaking down and commanding Gollum. So it's kind of, it's unfortunate, I think, that we miss out on some of these scenes. But I'm not gonna make any slight against Peter Jackson's decisions. I think that they were probably made for a particular reason that Peter Jackson probably stand by. And I mean,
absolutely,
he did. Again, a lot of them is when you have this kind of weak character, and maybe you can go to the heroism of these other characters to kind of help him out and protect him, because he is the one that needs the protecting. As we said, it's
also supposed to. I think that scene is also supposed to show more strength in Gollum as well, or more fear of what Gollum could do. Whereas, like, he's being commanded by Frodo in the book, whereas in the movie, he's basically risen from the dead and he's twice as evil as he's ever been, and he's like, I'm going to kill you now, and you're supposed to fear him.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're supposed to just have this worry of the antagonist.
I remember when the first time I saw that in cinema, I was like, would this fecker ever die? Like, stop coming back. What's he doing? But you know, in the end, he's the one that destroys the ring. So it's all good. So we're coming to an end, but
Okay.
just want to talk about something here, which is a threat that Frodo has to Gollum, which is really, really cool. So there's a small change in the books when they arrive for the first time at the Black Gate. Remember, all three of them arrive at the Black Gate in the movies, and then they're about to charge in, and Smeagol's just like, guys, that's a stupid idea. What are you at? I know another way in. And in the books, when that happens, the scene plays out a little bit differently. So Frodo isn't initially delighted that Smeagol's just finally now been like, oh, by the way, there's a back door into Mordor. And he says, Smeagol, he said, I will trust you once more. Indeed, it seems that I must do so, and that it is my fate to receive help from you, where I least looked for it, and your fate to help me, whom you long pursued with evil purpose. But I warn you, Smeagol, you are in danger. Yes, yes, master, said Gollum. Dreadful danger. Smeagol's bones shake to think of it, but he doesn't run away. He must help, nice master. I did not mean the danger that we all share, said Frodo. I mean a danger to yourself alone. You swore a promise by that what you call the precious. Remember that. It will hold you to it. But it will seek a way to twist it to your undoing. Already you are being twisted. You revealed yourself to me just now, foolishly. Give it back to Smeagol, you said. Do not say that again. Do not let that thought grow in you. You will never get it back. But the desire of it may betray you to a bitter end. You will never get it back. In the last, Smeagol, I should put on the precious, and the precious mastered you long ago. If I, wearing it, were to command you, you would obey, even if it were to leap from a precipice or to cast yourself into the fire, and such would be my command. So have a care, Smeagol. Sam looked at his master with approval, but also with surprise. There was a look in his face and a tone in his voice that he had not known before. It had always been a notion of his that the kindness of dear Mr. Frodo was of such a high degree that it must imply a fair measure of blindness. Of course, he also firmly held the incompatible belief that Mr. Frodo was the wisest person in the world, with the possible exception of old Mr. Bilbo and of Gandalf. Gollum, in his own way, may have made a similar mistake, confusing kindness with blindness.
Nice. That's cool. It's a great quote. Lots of different things to dissect there. Obviously, with the foreshadowing, but just Frodo's, just complete wisdom and control over every situation, and not missing a beat, I suppose. Like, you know, the whole Smeagol mess up there just really makes Frodo, you know, he's not hiding his emotion. He's just like, here, listen.
Yeah.
None of that.
He's completely in control. He's completely in command all the time. And there's another thing as well that we kind of, when we're watching the films, I think Peter Jackson went down the road trying to be like, okay, look, the ring is just eating away at this guy's spirit, at his health, and at his mind. And he's basically, by the end, you know, he's like I said, at one point when they're in Osgiliath, he pulls his sword on Sam, and he's there, like, you know, about to stab him. And Sam's like, do you not know who I am? Do you not recognize your Sam? And it takes him a few moments to kind of snap out of it. Now, in the books, again, totally different kind of situation where it doesn't really affect his mind at all. Really, it's completely physical, what it does to him, the ring. But his mind is still sharp, even till the very end. And then the first time that we kind of see his control being lost completely is when he eventually can't throw the ring into the fires of doom. So it's, again, a very big change. But I don't know. It's just sometimes I'm kind of disappointed that we don't get to see this Frodo, because it would be so cool to see just like a badass Frodo as well. But I mean, you know, can't complain with the movies that we got, because they're the greatest movies of all time. So,
well, that's an absolute fact. But it's the same thing with Faramir as well. I think everyone will agree. Every Tolkien fan will agree that the Faramir we get in the book is completely different to the Faramir in the movie. But like, there is a reason for that change, like a movie reason. And I do think as well, time, or the lack of time Peter Jackson had with, you know, screen time, just meant that, like, he can't show the effect of the ring in any other way apart from it literally kind of turning you crazy. A big part of the reason why Frodo is one of the ones that is the choice to bring the ring to Mount Doom, even though he made that decision himself, is the fact that he is a hobbit, and for some reason they're more durable to the power of the ring. But obviously, in the movies, as soon as he's wearing it, he's making weird decisions. He's dropping swords. He's tripping over rocks. He's saying crazy things. He's trying to stab Sam. So it's just how the movie shows the effect of the ring,
Yeah.
and it's going to be hard to do it any other way. If Frodo is as brilliant and, you know, in command of every situation, then you'd be kind of like, well, what is that ring really doing anyway?
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And actually, you just reminded me of something else that I saw in that same interview with the cast in Liverpool there recently, where the same question actually was asked, the one I mentioned earlier of, did you have any notes?
To Dominic.
Did you have any notes about your character that you felt weren't right for your character, or that your character actually would have done them a bit differently? Sam's answer, or Sean Astin's answer, was quite interesting, where he said that in the scene in the top of the tower in Cirith Ungol, when Frodo is actually, you know, a prisoner, and Sam has been kind of he's become a temporary ring bearer. He's holding the ring and he's guarding it for Frodo for a while, and you know, he's going to just pick up the pieces because he thinks that Frodo's dead. So he said that the note that he was given by Peter Jackson when Frodo was asking for the ring back, he was like, "Sam, give me the ring." He said, obviously, you need to kind of show a little bit of a delay, a bit of resistance, and just kind of, you know, almost like the ring is starting to affect you, even though you've only had it for such a short time, and you kind of you've got this strange desire to want to keep it for yourself. And we do see that happening in that scene that's shot. But Sean Astin, what he said was, he said that he was going to try and trick everyone by have that not like, so when you're watching that scene, the reason for the delay was to be that, you know, maybe Sam is actually thinking about keeping the ring for himself. But he said the way he shot it, in his mind, he was thinking, I don't know if I want to give this ring to Frodo because I don't want it to hurt him anymore, and I can't bear my master being hurt any longer. So he said that's what he was thinking while he was shooting that scene, and while he kind of pulls back for a moment, and he was like, I'm going to try and trick everyone, including Peter Jackson, and have them all think that I'm actually following his real note, but I'm secretly thinking this. So it was just like a really cool little kind of double bluff to be like, yeah, you got the shot that you were looking for, but I'm tricking you because I was really internally thinking it's all about my master, it's all about Frodo. So he wasn't actually being selfish. So Sam is the ultimate hero. You know, that's what we learned.
I was thinking about baseball the whole time. Yeah, no, I love that, and I never actually thought about that before. He has had to experience his master go through all this turmoil, and there could be a little part of him that's thinking, maybe I am stronger now to actually go on and destroy the ring. Like poor Frodo's had to carry it the whole time. We're so close now to the destination. Maybe I'm stronger, but then maybe his mind switches again and goes, actually, he is the chosen ring bearer. But yeah, that's all happening in the actor's mind, not the actual character.
The character's
so
mind.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
man, I gotta watch that.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. It's very good, and it's cool to see the four boys, and then also Orlando Bloom there is just kind of like, he doesn't really usually feature when them four lads are together. So it was really cool. It was nice.
Yeah, I love
nice
that little relationship there.
Yeah, it's great. So, Dave, we're going to talk about the final point, and that is one of the biggest changes. And this is not a change. This is actually a complete new addition. And that is that, again, I'm sure you'll know what this is because lots of Frodo's scenes were changed in the movies. But this is completely fabricated by Jackson and his team. And I can obviously see that this is a scene that added tension and heartbreak. Of course, I'm referring to the scene where Frodo sends Sam home after the whole, the crumbs and Smeagol throwing away the lembas bread and all that kind of stuff. So
I thought that was going to be the scene you were going to say that Sean Astin wished he could have changed.
No. Well, no, like, I mean, he played his role perfectly. He just was, devastated.
Of course, yeah.
And then he still, managed to come back and have this amazing, mighty return. But as I was saying there, I can obviously see that, this adds tension and heartbreak, and then later joy and relief at Sam's heroic return and his rescue of Frodo. But once more, it kind of added to the trope that Frodo just makes these bad decisions and, as I said, loses his mind to the ring and needs saving once again. And as I said before, just a moment ago, that the ring never really affected his mind that much until really the very end. So, like Frodo, he was obsessed with the ring, but he wasn't stupid, and there was no reason for him to believe Gollum and to dismiss Sam. And he knew very well what kind of person Gollum was and how loyal Sam was. And we saw that as well with some of the other quotes that I gave before of Frodo putting Gollum in his place and saying, look, I know what you're up to, and you're never going to get the ring back, and you just need to take that thought and put it out of your mind. Don't let that thought grow in you. And he's got his complete facilities with him, and he's not in any way weakened not weakened mentally. He's so basically just deciding to go on without Sam just doesn't really make much sense. So yeah, again, we spoke about this before, and so I think we both can agree that we understand the reason for it, but I still don't think it was the best addition.
I mean, I think that it's not only just a change of character for Frodo. I think there's lots of things going on in that scene, and I actually don't mind it as much as people hate it. I think one big theme in the movies, and it's a theme in the books as well, but a theme in the movies is the fact that Frodo is trying to constantly see the good in Gollum because he wants to believe that that he will be back to his old self again. So that's something. So that's why he cares for Gollum. He wants to know that he can change one day, and that's why they actually form a much closer bond. And Sam's kind of the outcast.
Like he sees himself in Gollum.
He sees himself in Gollum. He wants to know that Gollum can come back so that Frodo can come back. So I think just having them being a lot closer in the film means that Gollum has a much bigger opportunity to be more manipulative. And I think with getting closer to Mount Doom or Mordor, and with Gollum being so close, with Frodo being so weak, this is Gollum's opportunity to manipulate him to turn his friend against him. And obviously he has that foreshadowing where Gollum says, look now, soon he will ask you for it. And I think it's quite well done.
It is very well done. No, it is well done, yeah. And
I think the thing that I was saying earlier that I thought Sean Astin would have wished that he didn't have is the fact that a lot of people joke about this when he's blamed for eating all the food, and then he goes down to the bottom and he's like, wait a minute, there are crumbs. I didn't eat the food. So then he climbs all the way back up.
Yeah.
But obviously he didn't. But I
never thought that. It's more anger that he realizes, because maybe
that Gollum definitely threw it
maybe initially he didn't know what happened because he was just confused, and then just there was the fight with his master, and then he gets sent home, and it's all happened so fast. So he's kind of going, oh my God, what am I doing? I have to go home. Frodo doesn't want me to come with him anymore. And he's just so kind of caught up in those emotions that he starts to leave. And then when he sees the lembas bread there after he's gone down, like he kind of goes, now I know what's happened, that Gollum is...
And now I need to protect Frodo
exactly.
from
and
that
now Frodo's up.
Exactly.
Prick.
Yeah. So it is a big change, and obviously that is one that's so glaringly obvious. Like, it doesn't feel like Tolkien at all. That whole storyline is just...
It is a bit weird, and we're kind of going, look, Frodo would never turn away from Sam, and
but this Frodo, this
Frodo could. So there we are. So while both the books and the films present Frodo Baggins as this heroic figure, they do so in very different ways that significantly influence our perception of his character. So Peter Jackson's films highlight his vulnerabilities and the overwhelming burden of the ring, creating a more visibly fragile character whose heroism is often overshadowed by his need for support, making him more of a collaborative hero, supported by his companions. And in contrast, Tolkien's Frodo is a paragon of quiet strength, moral integrity, and resilience, whose heroism is defined by his willingness to endure immense personal sacrifice, all of which firmly establishes him as the main hero of the story. So there you go, Dave. How do you feel about Frodo at the end of this episode?
Yeah, my views haven't changed. No matter what I think of Frodo from the films, I still love the films for the way they are. And I think, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, where I said when I was younger I loved the swashbuckling Aragorn and the bravery of Boromir, and you don't really care about the Frodo and Sam scenes, but as you get older there's so much more appreciation of the young Hobbit that has to leave his home for other reasons that are above him, and
The struggle.
he has to the struggle and doing all this for the greater good. And that movie character Frodo really resonates with me also. But
Yeah.
for anyone that hasn't read the books, you gotta read that Frodo character, because
So if you've got to the end of this episode and you feel like I'm dismissing the character of Frodo from the films, please don't think that. I do, as I've said many, many times, these are the greatest films, the greatest trilogy of films ever made. And there's nothing wrong with these films, in my opinion. They're just a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And I love Frodo in the films. I love Elijah Wood's performance. I love how he did
nailed
that.
it.
He absolutely nailed it. And he definitely got the vision of Peter Jackson across. Now, but what I was trying to say is, however good those films are, you got to just look at the character of Frodo from the books, and it will just give you a deeper appreciation of this character. So if there's one character from the films that you think, oh, he's a bit weak and he's not that whatever, just go and read the books, and you're going to be like, wow, this is the boss. This is the Don. So that's
and
Frodo
you'll have that with so many characters. You'll have that with Faramir. You'll have that with
Faramir.
Denethor.
Tune in next week for Faramir. No, I'm not doing that next week.
Yeah. Well, we could do it sometime soon. On the agenda, we shall see.
Oh yeah.
What do you guys think? What's the next character you would like to see? The differences between the book and the movie, because we can talk about it all day.
We can. And as always, guys, please let us know what you think of these changes. Let us know if I forgot anything there, because I mean, there's so much to get into, and I kind of just took some of the most important ones and some of the ones I considered just that really, really showed an important change. But there were other small ones as well. So let me know if I forgot to mention one that you think is more important, or just what maybe the ones of the ones that I did mention. Let me know which one you think made the most significant change, or which one you thought was actually maybe you preferred the movie version than the book as well. So get on to us. Let us know.
Yeah, at melon_heads or melonheads official on Instagram.
There you go, guys. And until next time, we'll speak to you soon.
Adios.